A young woman sets out to find the truth behind the missing women in her small town and the urban legend associated with it. Now, while the supernatural ties don't work so well for this story, once it drops that and becomes straightforward, there's a bit of charm here to this one. Tonight in movie reviews, I'm talking Pig Hill. Stay tuned, y'all. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Tonight in movie reviews, again, we are talking Pig Hill, which recently had its world premiere at FrightFest 2025. I've been covering a number of films from that festival here recently, including your host. And coming up soon, I'm going to be talking 213 Bones. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, hitting that follow button, no matter where you are tuning in. We got a lot of great horror content up on the channel right now. And in addition to more films from Fright Fest 2025, we got a lot more great stuff coming up that I'll tell you about at the end of the show as well, too. But let's not waste any time. Let's jump right on into things. If you have not seen the trailer for Pig Hill before, since she was a child, Carrie has been enthralled by the local legend of the pig people of Pig Hill, disgusting mutants hell-bent on breeding and sowing chaos throughout the region. Now that she's an adult and an aspiring author, she can't seem to shake the notion that perhaps there is something more to these tales as the 10th woman goes missing from her hometown. And there it is, folks. That is Pig Hill. Now, Pig Hill is very much a cryptid movie. If you're not familiar of what a cryptid is, it's a creature or a monster from folklore or urban legends that tend to come from a lot of small towns. If you think of movies like Antlers, The Mothman Prophecies, Frogman, The Ritual, The Empty Man, these are all films about cryptid kind of stories. The small town element is important because whether it's tradition, religion, or some other dark secret, there's a sense of control that stops the inhabitants from having any sort of firm confirmation that you could get in a big city. Like, I mean, if we were to talk about, like, I'm in Colorado, for example, if we were to put a cryptid in Denver, Colorado, that's probably not all that realistic because as big of a city as that is, stories like that would get shut down fairly quickly. So that's the power of cryptid stories, is that they work so well being based out of small towns. And Pig Hill is just lucky enough to be based upon a real book by Nancy Williams that's about a number of missing Williams in Medville, Pennsylvania. So there is some truth to what the movie is trying to accomplish here. Now, of course, this is a completely original story and we're just taking that urban legend and adapting it here to this film, but that doesn't change the fact there's a hint of truth here in this film. Now, we're following this young woman, Carrie, a woman who has been fascinated with these stories of pigmen all of her life. And she's decided at this point, she's finally going to take the leap and do some investigating behind it to try to find the truth behind all these disappearances in her small town. Now, while she's doing this, she's dealing with the recent suicide of her husband, an overbearing brother who interjects himself into every single part of her life, and a new fling from a familiar old face. Carrie begins to discover that there is a dark truth about her hometown and that there are even closer ties to her own family in this urban legend that's going around here. Now, the movie definitely takes more of that supernatural route earlier on. You know, any of these films that I've named to you, they all have a supernatural kind of presence to it. It's not as simple as somebody's walking around and killing people or kidnapping people or anything like that. And here with Pig Hill, we kind of keep that up to where the earlier parts of the film very much have you wondering whether or not we are dealing with some kind of supernatural monster, a ghost, whatever the case is. But the problem is a combination of like both the budget as well as just the tone of the tone of the film doesn't really fit that supernatural tone that they're going for earlier on. Like even as they try to like kind of hint towards that to where, oh, we might see a pig man off in the distance while this character's walking by, or you might see, you know, a pig snort, hear a pig snort or something like that. Like these little flourishes they have throughout the earlier part of the film, they just don't really seem to fit all that much in here, honestly. The scares, the tension, the teases they put in there, they just don't work all that well. And maybe it's just because the immersion is not there. Maybe it's because compared to some of these other cryptids and urban legends that we've seen in films before, it's a little bit more on the ludicrous side compared to some of the other things. And I get it, films about wendigos and giant moth people and things like that. How more realistic could that be? But again, it's just kind of silly the way it's presented here, that there are people walking around that have the face of a pig. So it's really hard to find yourself like settling in and just taking everything there at face value. Like, it doesn't have the effect on you that you would want in this first half, to where if we were seeing like a ghost or a monster of some sort, like it'd be a little bit more interesting. You put that together with the very, very slow pacing of just following Carrie around, and she doesn't actually seem to be making that much of progress. Like, she's not really getting a lot of answers that would really shine a light on this urban legend, on this conspiracy that's going on in her town. We as the audience like are feeling the exact same way, where there's frustration and we feel like we're spinning our wheels a little bit, and it makes it really, really hard to jump into the first half of this film. Now, once that supernatural angle is dropped, then we're all on the same page. Like, the idea of, okay, this has to be somebody or someone, some few people running around committing all these heinous acts within Medville. And that's where the quality of the film really does pick up, because we're just trying to work through this evidence the same way that Carrie does. And I think that objectively looking at everything that's presented in the first half of this film, it's impossible to really come to like a conclusion that, again, something supernatural is happening. So when that all goes away, the film becomes much more focused, and as somebody watching from the audience, it becomes a lot more enjoyable, because we can actually put our hands on something that we can understand. That's not to say if it was something supernatural we couldn't. We do that with plenty of other films, but this is just not the movie for that. I think movies like The Empty Man have this kind of luck, luxury, good grace, whatever you want to call it, to where they can handle the balancing act of the supernatural elements versus just an everyday, ordinary human. And these stories tend to work a little bit better. You're invested regardless of which way it's ultimately going, but it's at least somewhat true to the people of Medville, so it seems to just not be as strong of a story here. I don't know if it's a case of the true story or the urban legend behind everything that's inspired Pig Hill just doesn't really work out as well as they would ultimately want to. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it's just not as strong as it really could be. Now, the film is plenty brutal and bloody. The opening had me in complete shock in like the first 5 minutes of the amount of carnage that all take place there. The film deals pretty directly with themes including kidnap and imprisonment, sexual assault, and children having to deal with all of this. So there's plenty enough here to keep you disturbed through the runtime. And again, the very beginning and as we get closer to the end, there's going to be these moments that really do stand out to you. So the movie does a really, really good job when it comes to grossing you out and having a good amount of blood and gore to present to you ultimately. That part really does work out well here, and I'm a big practical effects fan, and we get plenty of that in spades with Pig Hill. Rainey Qualley, Shane West, and Shiloh Fernandez lead the cast. I've been watching Shane West and Shiloh Fernandez for the better part of 20 plus years now on various TV and movie projects. These two have nothing new in the world of horror, and I don't mean that in a negative way, as in like they've done plenty of horror projects before. I know a lot of you probably know Shiloh Fernandez from the Evil Dead reboot that came out back in 2013. 2011 or 2013, one of those years when that Evil Dead reboot came out. And it's interesting because you can kind of see some similarities to his character that he played in that film to the brother of Carrie that he plays here in Pig Hill, you know, dealing with somebody who's obsessed, somebody who has a one-track mind. They're dealing with some recent losses as well too, and he's trying to be the, I don't know, the stability point for his sister, and yet he still continues to fail over and over and over. There are definitely similarities here from what we've seen in Evil Dead over in this one, but of course, Evil Dead is just a fantastic film, and while there are those similarities, it does pale in comparison to what was achieved over there. Shane West, we know from a million and one different films here now, and it's nice to see that he's very much okay with still doing a lot of genre roles as his career has gone more and more further out there now. I'm a big fan of seeing him do films like this. Even though it's such a small role, I always love going back to Dracula 2000. He had a very small role in that film as a cameraman that gets ganked by Dracula fairly early on. Love seeing him in horror films here. Rainey Qualley, though, I did not know that Margaret Qualley had siblings here, and that Rainey Qualley is one of those siblings. So nice to see that these horror not roots, but that there's an interest in doing horror here from the younger generation of Andy McDowell's kids. I'm hoping that that continues on, because then we get a lot of fun stuff, kind of like we just had The Substance last year with Margaret. So hopefully Rainey can make some projects like that materialize here as well. Kevin Lewis, who is doing directorial duties here, actually did the better Five Nights at Freddy's film, Willy's Wonderland, that came out a few years back. And while I did enjoy Willy's Wonderland much more than I did Pig Hill, again, you can only do so much here when the script is very uneven. And like I said, the second part of the film really does wonders here once we're getting it back to being just a very flesh and blood killer or killers who are behind everything that's going on. You're going to get a bit of disturbing content here out of Pig Hill. And again, once we do shift firmly into that second half and we as the viewers have a better handle of everything that's going on, there's a bit more here to enjoy. But that first half is really such a slog to get through, unfortunately. And the supernatural elements just drag this material down much more than it really should be. Pig Hill ultimately ends up with a 2.5 out of 5. It's one that I would definitely recommend you guys going and checking out, especially if you're a big fan of cryptid horror. But at the same time, you're not really going to miss anything here if this is one that you ultimately choose to skip. Let me know what you thought about this one here in the comment section. If you have a favorite cryptid movie out there, Empty Man, Antlers, The Ritual, whatever it is, let me know that as well too. Let's talk about some of those there. And of course, get subscribed to my channel, as that is the best way to stay on top of everything that I'm going to be dropping here for y'all. You can do that by going to linktr.ee/T-Scary-Movie. If you get subscribed, that'll give you access to the YouTube page for video versions of the show, your favorite podcasting platforms, the audio-only versions of the show, my Letterboxd page for written reviews and movie rankings through the year, my TikTok page for short horror content including movie news, movie premieres, and movie reviews, my Twitch page for horror gaming including Phasmophobia, and my Fangoria shop page where you can enjoy a 20% discount off anything in the Fangoria shop. Take advantage of that, y'all. Hit that subscribe button. We got a lot of great content coming up for you, including we're going to do an Alien Earth double feature where we're going to look at episodes 2 and 3. We're going to take a look at another Dexter Resurrection double feature. We're going to be talking 213 Bones. We are talking Fright Night, The Toxic Avenger, both the remake and the original. I got so much fun stuff coming y'all's way. I do not want you to miss out on any of that at all. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. September 1st is coming up. We got a lot of great horror content coming up for y'all here, including another Tales from the Crypt double feature next Wednesday, September 3rd, which will premiere right after my exclusive interview with Keith Coogan. Yes, Keith Coogan from Adventures in Babysitting, from Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, and one of my all-time favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes, House of Horrors. That interview will also be dropping September 3rd, so don't miss any of that, folks. Hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button. But that is it for me here tonight. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scary.